is going to have an impact on air travel today?
I don't think it would have an impact. I think what they're trying to shut down is the various private pilots.
The small airports.
Small airports, small airplanes. I mean, I know of cases all the way up northeast Texas of friends that were jumping in their little Piper Cuffs and taking off and heading down here to see what they could see. I think that's what they're trying to eliminate, because they don't want to have any collisions between all of these military and government aircraft.
No matter how many times we come up and say, folks, please stay out of the area. We're going to bring you the latest video. You're going to be able to see it better if you stay there and watch CBS 11. No matter how many times we see it, Robert, there's going to be those folks. There will always be those folks who try to get into the area. And, you know, a gridlock could ensue if the authorities don't come and start directing that traffic back and away from these areas.
Yeah, and at this point, we really have not seen much, you know, local air traffic. And we were at the control center here at this airport a while ago, and they were to all pilots in the area that the airspace had been shut down and to clear it. These customs pilots thought that maybe they would be apt to go out and enforce it as well. They're in a jet, which is really not suitable for surge.
Now, Robert, we are about 4 hours into this. The time frame that we are looking at, we spoke with a colonel from Fort Hood a couple of hours ago, Tracy, and they were waiting for word. Is this the kind of thing, should this be moving more rapidly, or what can we expect in the future in terms of search and recovery?
Well, you know, these bases are quite some distance from here, and you've got to realize Fort Hood, they've been gearing up for their deployment to the Persian Gulf. You know, down in Corpus Christi and Beaumont, you can see helicopters from their units just lined up being put aboard ships. So that would pose a problem as well.
Join our guessing game here, Robert. I know you've done work with NASA in the past. They've said absolutely nothing publicly yet. And Sean O'Keefe, the NASA administrator, was supposed to talk to us today at noon, and here it is, almost 12:18, and he still hasn't emerged. What do you think the holdup is?
Well, you know, Tracy, you remember when we were covering the Challenger crash? Well, I think there was, you know, some gap there, although you were at the Space Center and you saw it. You know, I think they're trying to prepare themselves for all the questions. You know, they get what's called telemetry data coming in from the various propulsion systems and data. They get a data stream into the center, and they're probably wanting to look to see what was going on in the minutes before this occurred and if there was anything unusual to address it now. And I don't know, this had been updated, and I don't know if it had any kind of sensors or homing beacons on the crew cabin. I do remember from the Challenger that, you know, there were reports later that parts of that crew cabin were found somewhat intact at the bottom of the ocean. And they're probably trying to just, you know, decide or locate if it is somewhere around here. Of course, there wouldn't be any chance of anyone surviving, just as there wasn't in the other.
You know, the other thing, Robert, and this is one of the things that perhaps we don't talk about quite enough, and you mentioned the Challenger, and when we were there, the thing that, one of the many things that stands out in my mind from that period, NASA was really very compassionate when it came to trying to protect and deal with the families, and I've always respected, I respect NASA for a lot of reasons, but that was certainly one of them.
Right. You know, I am anxious to see the crash investigation. I covered the hearings, the Challenger investigation in Washington, and I remember there was a scientist there from one of the universities who did a little experiment right there at the table, but during a break, concerning the seals. Remember the rubber seals, the gaskets, the rubber gaskets that had failed, and he did a demonstration with a piece of rubber in a glass of ice water to show how they would become rigid and everything, and he made a case right there on the spot that that must be the problem, and that little impromptu scientific experiment proved to be correct.
Robert, as always, we appreciate it. We'll be checking back with you momentarily. Robert Riggs, CBS 11 News, reporting to us today from the Tyler area. And
we are going to go now to Uma Pemaraju, who is live in near Palestine, I believe in the town of Rice. Is that right, Uma?
Well, Karen, we're right outside Palestine. I was in Rice just about an hour ago, and at that location on I-45, just about 10 miles north of Corsicana, we stumbled upon a 6x6 piece of tile, a charred piece of tile. The police in the area were just beginning to arrive and putting out some of the yellow tape. We were told by the police chief there that they received calls from the volunteer fire department finding this piece of tile right by a high school and right on the field of this high school. And from what they were telling us, they were very concerned about this being hazardous material. They were already in contact with officials from NASA who were telling them not to go near it, that there could be radioactivity from this piece of tile, so they were warning reporters and other people who were just trying to stop by and take a look to stay back. But again, we saw a piece of tile 6x6 in its dimensions, and I've been speaking with people on the phone in this area. We're going to be heading out to several locations, people who are calling us, telling us where they have found and located pieces of debris along different farms and roadways. So we're going to go check those out as soon as I get off the air here. But again, this is an area where a great deal of debris has been falling, and a lot of folks very concerned about the ramifications about this. Reporting live just outside Palestine, this is Ilan Ramon.
All right, Irma, thank you very much. Let's go now to the Kennedy Space Center.
Earlier, we'll make a statement today, and then at this point, and a little later this afternoon at about 3 o'clock Eastern Time, there'll be a full technical briefing conducted from the Johnson Space Center. So at this point, we're just going to give you the circumstances as we understand them leading up to this particular tragedy today. This is indeed a tragic day for the NASA family, for the families of the astronauts who flew on STS-107, and likewise tragic for the nation. Immediately upon indication of a loss of communications on STS-107, at a little after 9 a.m. this morning, we began our contingency plan to preserve all the information relative to the flight activities. I immediately advised the President and the Secretary of Homeland Security, Secretary Tom Ridge, at the point after landing was due to have occurred at 9:16, spoke to them very briefly thereafter to advise that we had lost contact with the shuttle orbiter Columbia and STS-107 crew. They offered, the President specifically offered, full and immediate support to determine what the appropriate steps were thereafter to be taken. We then spent the next hour and a half working through the detail and information of what we have received, and Bill Reedy will walk you through the specifics of those operational and technical issues here in just a moment. Thereafter, we have met with the family members of the astronauts who were here at Kennedy Space Center and are soon to be departing back to Johnston, to Houston. The President has called and spoken to them to express our deepest national regrets. We have assured them that we will begin the process immediately to recover their loved ones and understand the cause of this tragedy. At this time, we have no indication that the mishap was caused by anything or anyone on the ground. We've assembled a mishap investigation team that immediately was assembled upon the point of past the stage in which the orbiter was to have landed here at Kennedy Space Center a little after 9:30, and that team in turn is coordinating on a regular basis on all the facts that are pertaining to this from the Johnson Space Center, and a rapid response team from here at the Kennedy Space Center, as well as participants from the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. In addition to these internal efforts, we have also appointed a mishap investigation board, an external group of people who are independent from NASA, who will immediately be charged with the opportunity to look at all the information that was immediately locked down right after our absence of communications. Each of these individuals are safety and mission assurance related officials in other federal departments of the federal government, from the Air Force, from the Navy, from the Department of Transportation, and across the federal expanse. The investigation team will also be chaired by an individual contacted to serve who is external to the federal agencies, and will have the opportunity to coordinate all the information, again, from an external view. So we'll be conducting both the internal activity as well as an external review immediately to ascertain the causes and circumstances under which this tragedy occurred. We've pulled together all the federal agencies and local governments as well. In discussion several times this morning with Secretary Tom Ridge, the effort is heavily underway to coordinate an understanding of exactly where the orbiter path had taken it from West Texas towards the Kennedy Space Center here in Florida, and to make sure that the material on the ground is secured so that the investigation can begin promptly. We would urge anyone who believes they have discovered or found any material to stay away from it and to please contact local officials. The local first responder groups for emergency services and so forth have been authorized and directed by Secretary Tom Ridge to assist in all manner. The Federal Emergency Management Agency is coordinating that effort on the part of the Department of Homeland Security. I was here this morning with the families of the astronauts and their friends. It started out as a pretty happy morning, awaiting the landing of STS-107. And we had highly anticipated their return because we couldn't wait to congratulate them for their extraordinary performance and their excellent efforts on the science mission on this very important flight. They dedicated their lives to pushing the scientific challenges for all of us here on Earth. And they dedicated themselves to that objective and did it with a happy heart, willingly, and with great enthusiasm. The loss of this valiant crew is something we will never be able to get over, and certainly the families of all of them, we have assured we will do everything we can possibly do to guarantee that they work their way through this horrific tragedy. We ask the members of the media to honor that too. To please respect their privacy and please understand the tragedy that they are going through at this time. We will help the media assure that be the case as well. We trust that the prayers of the nation will be with them and with their families. And again, a more courageous group of people you could not have hoped to know than the families of these crew members. And an extraordinary, extraordinary group of astronauts who gave their lives and did it in a way that they knew exactly the risk, but never, ever, do we ever want to see a circumstance where something like this could ever happen. And we diligently dedicate ourselves every single day to assuring these things don't occur. And when they do, we have to act responsibly, accountably, and that's exactly what we will do. To give you more of the operational detail of what has occurred here since 9 a.m. this morning, the Associate Administrator for Spaceflight, a former astronaut, retired captain of the United States Navy, former test flight pilot, Bill Reedy, who has commanded 2 separate missions previously and as an astronaut, and is now, again, our Associate Administrator for Spaceflight, and has worked with me all morning, along with all of us here at Kennedy Space Center, to work through the details of the events as we know them, and to present to you the facts that we understand them. Again, the technical details that are being worked very diligently now will be covered again at 3 p.m. this afternoon out of the Johnson Space Center. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Captain Bill Reedy.
a truly difficult day for all of us. Many of us were standing alongside the runway waiting to celebrate their triumphant return after a 16-day science mission. I think you could tell from the downlink that they loved what they were doing and they thought what they were doing was extremely important, pushing back those boundaries in science. At 9 o'clock, we heard that they had lost data from the spacecraft, and it appears that that was at about 200,000 feet, about Mach 18. The loss of data was somewhere over north central Texas, and at the planned landing time of 9:16, we initiated our contingency action plan, called the Rescue Coordination Center, and initiated a search and rescue effort. Sadly, I think from the video that's available, it does not appear that there were any survivors. We have currently impounded all the data, including all the pre-flight certification of flight readiness for STS-107. And at this point, I'd have to say it's too early to speculate about the exact cause. Obviously, we're looking at all the data that we have available. Those people that have videos, those people that have still pictures, we'll urge you to contact NASA so that we can coordinate those things that might be available. And to reiterate what the administrator said, those people that may find debris, do not touch it, do not move it. Contact your local authorities, have them impound it and secure the area so that our technical specialists will be able to piece together the puzzle so that we can resolve what happened. Our immediate focus is on the crew families, and we spent some time with them. The President called. I'd have to say the families are bearing up with an incredible amount of dignity considering their loss. We all grieve for them. We all pray with them for the crew. But one thing came across loud and clear when visiting with them is they knew that the crew was absolutely dedicated to the mission that they were performing. And I think you could see that in the video downlink. They believed in what they were doing. And in the conversations with the crew and their families, they said that we must find what happened and fix it and move on. And we can't let their sacrifice be in vain. Today was a very stark reminder that this is a very risky endeavor, pushing back the frontiers in outer space, and after 113 flights, unfortunately, people have a tendency to look at it as something that is more or less routine. Well, I can assure you it is not. Each and every time I flew, each and every time my colleagues flew, we treated that with the respect that it deserved from a professional standpoint. And I have to say that as the one responsible for shuttle and station within the NASA, that I know that the people of NASA did everything possible preparing for this flight to make it as perfect as possible. My promise to the crew and to the crew families is that the investigation that we have just launched will find the cause, we'll fix it, and then we'll move on. Thank you.
Again, we know you all have questions, and we will have a news briefing at 3 o'clock, and we'll give you that opportunity at that time. Thank you.
Stand by.
Well, NASA has finished its news conference, and obviously and understandably emotional Captain Bill Reedy, former astronaut, said that they lost data at something over 200,000 feet. And he said, and I quote, "We must find out what happened," and moved on. Sean O'Keefe, who is the director of NASA, says the loss of this valued crew is something NASA will never be able to get over. There were 7 astronauts on board the shuttle, and Mr. O'Keefe said at this time, I'm quoting now, "We have no indication that this was caused by anyone or anything on the ground." He said an investigative team will be chaired by someone outside the government immediately. He's coordinating with the new Office of Homeland Security to secure the debris sites. And Director O'Keefe said the loss of this valiant crew is something we will never get over. We trust the nation's prayers will be with them and their families. Well, as we've had several times today, this is a particularly solemn moment because while we've known for some hours that it's gone, the shuttle, and that those aboard it could not have and did not survive, there's something of finality when the director of NASA comes out and confirms what we first knew really in our hearts when we first heard that the shuttle had crashed from that tremendous height. And then what we first knew all over again, if you'll pardon that syntax, when the word of an unidentified U.S. but high government official said, "It's gone, the shuttle," and that there were no survivors. This may be as appropriate a moment as any as we think about what we have heard from this NASA news conference, as we've seen the pictures of the space shuttle as it came down to Earth, which no doubt will be, they now go into our national archive, if you will, into the museum of our minds, as was the case with the explosion of the Challenger shuttle, as was the case of the burned capsule experimenting back in the 60s with the Zero Apollo crew. But these images now become part of our national history, part of our national memory. And as we watch the crew, as it excitedly and with understandable pride and excitement boarded the spacecraft, and then look upon the faces of these young people who died in service of their country, maybe as good a time as any, and I will paraphrase a poem that Theodore O'Hara wrote a long time ago. Pieces of it are inscribed above Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C. The muffled drum's sad roll has beat. The astronaut's last tattoo. No more on life's parade shall meet that brave and fallen few. On fame's eternal camping ground, their silent tents are spread, and glory guards with solemn round this bivouac of the dead. We put on our screen, as we have before, the faces of these not only brave but tremendously accomplished young Americans, plus the one Israeli who was aboard as part of NASA's ongoing program of bringing in the nationals of other countries. Many have been on these previous flights. The flag at the White House at half-staff. What remains now is for the nation to mourn, to express its respect, its condolences, respect for the astronauts, condolences to their families, for the investigation to begin. Bill Harwood has reported from Florida. His sources have told him that in the very early stages, they're looking and thinking very carefully about the left wing of the shuttle. Not to say that that's what caused the crash, not to say that anything was wrong on that left wing. However, it is to report as a fact that in the early going, the best experts NASA has, they're sort of looking carefully at that left wing as a possible part of the puzzle, as it was described in the NASA news conference. Russ Mitchell, I hope that you and others will forgive the necessary personal reference, but I was at Rice Stadium in Houston in 1962 when President Kennedy committed the nation to put a man on the moon. Said at that time he was dedicating the nation and its resources to man exploration of space and dedicated the nation to reach the moon, which we did in early 1969. And, you know, hark back to that time. It was an exciting time in the history of the nation, exciting time in the history of space flight. But we knew then that it was going to be, you know, it would consume our lifetime and the lifetime of our children and their children, this exploration of space. And I thought that Sean O'Keefe, at the news conference, the director, they were eloquent in describing what these young people knew they were doing. That is, they were pushing the envelope, to use the cliche phrase, I suppose, pushing further and further man's exploration into space, and were so dedicated to it.
My father worked at McDonnell Douglas, so the old McDonnell Douglas, which helped build many of the Apollo and Gemini spacecraft. So I too have had this emotional attachment to the space program. I can remember July 20th, 1969, sitting in the basement, seeing Neil Armstrong on the moon. And days like this are sad for a lot of reasons, for me personally and for many Americans. But I think about those days and the pride my dad had in the space program and what he helped contribute to it. And I think about him today and all the folks who have done that over the years. It's very sad.
There is new video in of the debris. This video was shot by Jeff Foreman, an engineer with a degree in physics. He's out of Waco, Texas. And I believe you're on the phone with us, are you not, Jeff?
Yes.
Well, describe for us what we're seeing here.
This is the view over central Texas as we saw it this morning. We picked it up as a single vehicle, and then obviously you see on the screen now it is broken up into several parts.
Well, this is from another angle, if you will. Earlier we had the video which showed the spacecraft coming down, if you will, from upper right to left on the screen, which indicates to me that the person who took that video was somewhat to the north and east. You're in central Texas, and you were, in effect,
right,
looking north and slightly east, were you?
Right. We picked it up in our northwest. I believe that other video you have is probably shot from around the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We're farther south of there, and the shuttle probably came about between us. So while their view was looking south, mine is looking back toward the north. So it's a lot illuminated differently from the sunlight, and that's a different perspective altogether.
Well, since this is new, Jeff Foreman, I hope that the people with whom you're working there can re-rack it so we can have another look at it, and perhaps in the control room what we can eventually do is put together the previous best amateur photograph we have of the position somewhere in North Texas. Now, this was taken in Central Texas. No, I'm sorry. This was the one taken from North Texas. This is what we've had before, amateur video taken in North Texas. I'm not going to narrate much over it. What can you say? You could see the long stream of smoke that came down. Now we're going to show you the amateur video taken in the central part of the state around Waco by Jeff Foreman and his wife, Julie. Now, I believe still on the telephone with us is Colonel Mark Brown, who flew the shuttle Columbia some years ago. If you're still with us there in Dayton, Ohio, Colonel Brown, did you see this new video?
Yes, I did.
Can you put it in context for us?
Well, that's a tall order to start with. The perspective that we have here is very much the same as NASA and everybody else does, trying to understand exactly what this chain of events is. In one of the views, it appears that a large white panel is tumbling behind the orbiter, and then some seconds after that, there's a plume that would indicate either the ignition of some kind of fluid on the vehicle or an explosion, and then the breakup follows that. Just like NASA, we'll all be looking at these different views, I'm sure, for the next number of days, trying to put together in our own minds what that exact sequence of events is.
And Colonel Brown, what do you make of the early reports? And we've confirmed these reports that in the very early stages, just, you know, happening today, that the NASA experts, engineers and others sort of concentrating for the moment on the left wing of the space capsule. Well, I shouldn't call it a space capsule, of the spacecraft.
Right. Two things. First of all, we need to keep in mind that all the data has been impounded by NASA, and for good reason. So where they may know a lot more than we do, we're relegated to being in a speculation mode. Secondly, they literally are going through exactly the same process, trying to match the system's telemetry and the behavior of the vehicle with the visual information they're getting from all the different video that's being collected by professionals and amateurs around the country. And ultimately, they will try to piece that together with the structural evidence, physical evidence that's on the ground, to find out absolutely what the cause of the accident was. Also, I guess I would like to give great tribute to a lot of the eyewitness accounts that we have had so far. There have been some reports of people who have said they heard explosions in the sky. We now know that, of course, it is quite normal for the shuttle to make a double sonic boom when it passes overhead. The eyewitnesses that reported hearing multiple independent sonic booms, of course, is quite correct. The vehicle at the time that appears to have broken up was going somewhere in the neighborhood of Mach 15, Mach 18, depending on timing here. And it would indeed cause multiple sonic booms. And the sonic boom is from the speed of the individual pieces of debris moving through the atmosphere and not the sound of an explosion occurring up at that altitude. Secondly, this cannot be emphasized enough. Anybody that sees any debris coming down and landing should not touch it. They should obviously clearly mark it and notify the authorities so that can be dealt with in a professional way. A lot of the chemicals on the orbiter are very toxic and certainly are a threat to life if handled improperly.
Dr. Brown, we appreciate your insight. It's extremely valuable to us, and I appreciate you being with us today. We'll switch quickly to Bob Orr, our CBS News aviation coverage man in Washington, who has some new information. Bob?
Dan, first, I just want to make a quick comment about that video we just saw. Very early in that sequence, we see something that could be very, very telling, and you touched on it there when you were talking to the commander. A large piece, or it appears to be a large piece, separates before we see the first sign of any kind of explosion or fire. That could be significant because if we're talking about a structural failure, some kind of big structural breakup of the Columbia spacecraft, that could be indicated here by right there. We see something that starts to come off right there. And as we see, that's followed then by other obvious fire and explosion type pictures, but that could catch the sun as it comes down that large piece if it's a big flat surface and could give the image of it being on fire. So we don't want to go too far out here, but that could be, and I emphasize could be, a sign of some type of breakup. Bill Harwood says, as we've reported, that sources tell him that the telemetry data stream, that is the real-time information coming from Columbia, may indicate there was a problem in that left wing. A senior administration official told me a short time ago, he would not confirm that report, but he did say a short time ago that they are investigating a, quote, systems failure. I don't know what systems failure means, but obviously that could be code for some type of major mechanical problem. Beyond that, the administration's made a curious choice here in asking or directing, rather, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to head the investigation. The early idea was NASA would probably do that in cooperation with the NTSB, but now FEMA, the folks that normally respond to hurricanes, tornadoes, natural disasters, will be the lead agency. And beyond that, we're told that NORTHCOM, that's the new military command, will be there to assist. And a cavalry division from Fort Hood is going to be dispatched to help with search and rescue and to help secure debris fields. It's a huge challenge because, as the radar data has shown and as these video images have shown, what is left of Columbia is probably scattered over several hundred square miles. This, in effect, if it were a crime, would be a crime scene. It is an investigation scene, and all of this could be critically important to figuring out what exactly went wrong. First responders are out right now trying to secure the evidence best they can. They apparently will get some help from the Army as FEMA moves forward to try to put all of this back together. Dan?
Well, Bob Orr, one wouldn't want to make too much of this, but it's going to strike a lot of people as passing most strange that FEMA, of all the government agencies, which is as good as it can be and has been, is not noted to having physicists and engineers and aeronautical experts. FEMA, why FEMA?
Well, I think, and this is my opinion, that this is a first run for the Homeland Security. I'm sorry, Dan, I'm getting a little echo there. I believe that this is the first run out of the box for the new Homeland Security Department in an attempt to mount a coordinated response. Now, while FEMA will be at the point of the spear, so to speak, right behind FEMA will be all of the technical expertise of NASA and from the NTSB. So I think the folks at FEMA, so used to responding to natural disasters, we get all the technical assistance they need. But this is a message, and I think we shouldn't mistake it, from the Bush administration that this will be a very centrally controlled investigation. The new Secretary of Homeland Security, Tom Ridge, will be directing it, and FEMA will be his first responder. Dan?
Bob Orr. We're going to bring you up to date on what's happened as we pass the top of the hour for those of you who haven't been with us right the way through. But let's just say for the moment the headlines of the hour are the Shuttle Columbia is gone, destroyed as it plunged to Earth this morning over North Texas. No survivors among the astronaut crew of 7. Cause unknown. An investigation has been launched. We have with us now, and we're honored to have him, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, the Honorable Dan Gillivan. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Our condolences to the family of Ilan Ramon.
Thank you.
And to those in your country for their loss. 2 free countries exploring the high frontier for the sake of humanity. In a special time of the Intifada, it must have been a period of special pride for Israel to have an Israeli aboard this spacecraft.
It was indeed. First, let me express my very deep condolences on behalf of my country to the American families of the other 6 astronauts. As you say, this is a very, very tragic day for all of us because this mission was a celebration of the partnership between our 2 countries, a celebration of the bravery and the freedom and the exploration and the spirit of our 2 countries. And it was something very positive, something beautiful in the midst of a very ugly situation, a very horrible situation in our country. And as a result of that, Ilan became very much a national hero. Because when you see the pictures of the Intifada, and you've been there, and you see bodies strewn and children dying, all of a sudden, in the midst of all that, there comes this very beautiful person, the person who has exhibited bravery and courage throughout his life, who was an Air Force pilot, who participated in some of the most daring missions of the Israeli Air Force, who took part in bombing the nuclear reactor in Iraq. That bombing in '81, by the way, was condemned by most of the world. I think in retrospect today, when people look at what is happening in Iraq, they will probably commend and applaud that. And then he joins with his American friends in exploring outer space for the benefit of humanity. There is something positive coming out of all this, something which brought a lot of pride, a lot of exhilaration to the Israeli people who looked up to him as a hero, as someone who embodied everything that was good in Israel. And this partnership between our 2 countries, this bond between our 2 countries, was something very important to all of us because it showed that beyond strategic cooperation, beyond military cooperation, there is cooperation in good causes. And the fact that it has come to such a tragic end is devastating. And I must tell you that in Israel, the personal sorrow and grief for the family of Ilan Ramon, his wife and 4 children, and for the families of his American colleagues, is mixed with great national sorrow. My son is an officer in the Israeli Air Force, in a unit which specializes actually in rescuing pilots who operate behind enemy lines. And maybe because of that, I can sympathize with what has happened even more. But beyond the personal angle, this is a destruction and a very tragic end to one of the most beautiful manifestations of cooperation and of partnership between the 2 most beautiful countries in the world, great America and small Israel, 2 great democracies who, in excellence and in curiosity and in very much bravery and spirit of freedom, went to explore outer space. And the fact that it has ended like that is very, very, very tragic. We want to project from our country all the good that we have, and we're doing it in partnership with the U.S. I can tell you that only a week ago, I was at Lincoln Center and I was standing, it was a few days after presenting my credentials, while the New York Philharmonic and Israeli Philharmonic, both on the same stage, 200 of them, were playing the American national anthem and the Israeli national anthem. I felt a lot of pride, I had goose pimples, I had tears in my eyes, because I felt that that was a very great moment of cultural getting together. Now, what Ilan and his friends tried to do, what the US and Israel tried to do together, went beyond that, not only geographically because it was in outer space, but it went beyond all the borders we knew. It was breaking them for the good of humanity. And, you know, I spoke to the Prime Minister, to Ariel Sharon, last night. He was awaiting Ilan's return with great anticipation. I spoke to many friends in Israel today, and they were crying on the phone. It was such a tragedy, and again, that mixture of the personal tragedy, of the family, of the children, of this son of Holocaust survivors, which is another thing. I think that Ilan embodied everything that was good in Israel, but beyond that, he took with him to space, as you know, a drawing of a 10-year-old boy who perished in Auschwitz. He drew it in Theresienstadt, at the concentration camp of Theresienstadt, took it with him to Auschwitz and perished there. That drawing came to the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, and Ilan is a sign that at the end of the day, good prevails over evil, that the Israeli people, after 2 generations, have come from being slaughtered in the concentration camps to exploring outer space with their American friends. This was a statement which was larger than life, and that makes this tragedy larger than life.
They were literally reaching for the stars.
Reaching for the stars and achieving the Israeli dream and the American dream, and this dream turning into such a nightmare today.
One wants to keep in mind, Mr. Ambassador, and I know you do have it in mind, that the program of taking aboard the space shuttle nationals from other countries didn't begin and will not end with taking aboard of an Israeli astronaut.
I know.
There was a Saudi astronaut before. And the reason I mention it because in the looming war with Iraq, the reality of what's been happening on the ground in your country and with the Palestinians, there's the risk that there will be people who try to take advantage of this for their own ideological or partisan political advantage of saying, you see, they had an Israeli aboard this spaceship. And it was just to take a moment to point out that the program was designed to have as many people, many qualified people from as many nationalities to take space flight as possible. And that's how Ilan Ramon got aboard the space shuttle.
That's right. As you said, there were many nationals. For Israel, this was a first. I hope that nobody is going to be cynical enough or cruel enough to use this in any negative way. This was a wonderful example and demonstration of partnership between 2 great countries. And I hope very much that we will soon see another Israeli astronaut go up there with his American friends, overcome the difficulties and demonstrate to the whole world that the spirit, the curiosity, the excellence, the freedom-loving spirit of both our countries will prevail even after this tragedy and even after all the other events which may take place in the future.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me, and my condolences. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go now to John Roberts, our chief White House correspondent. John?
Dan, President Bush is scheduled to address the nation in about 2 minutes' time from the cabinet room. He arrived back here shortly after 12 noon. He's been huddled with his chief of staff, Andrew Card, his communications people, and his speechwriting team led by Michael Gerson, who crafted the majority of the State of the Union address. He's been putting together some words of comfort for the nation and to express his thoughts and appreciation for the heroes who died on board the Space Shuttle Columbia. We're told that this is going to happen at 2 o'clock Eastern, but the preparations were hurriedly put together. It may slide just a little bit, but they're trying to get it as close to 2 o'clock as they can. We can also tell you, Dan, that the Federal Emergency Management Agency has been designated as the lead agency for debris and search. They are going to be charged with securing and recovering the parts of the space shuttle. They have a satellite office that's set up in Denton, Texas. The acting undersecretary for emergency preparedness and response, Michael Brown, is in touch with the governor of Texas, Rick Perry, and governors of other states surrounding the area where the debris field is to find out what they need and how FEMA will respond. It's not clear at this point if Mr. Brown will be going to Texas himself and or Joe Albaugh, who resigned as a FEMA director but is still on as acting FEMA director until March, will go down as well. So the president expected in the next couple of minutes here, Dan. We'll keep watching that for you.
Reporting live from the White House at the top of the hour. I want to recap now for those of you who may have just joined us, or those of you who have joined us in progress or went away from the television set and coming back. Just a short time ago, NASA announced officially, and finally, the Space Shuttle Columbia was destroyed and said it, quote, does not appear there are any survivors among the 7 astronauts. NASA Administrator Sean O'Keefe says it is a sad day for the astronauts' families and for the nation. O'Keefe said there's no indication whatsoever that this was caused by anything or anyone on the ground, and for that matter, any bomb aboard the spacecraft itself. He did not say that directly. That was the clear inference. And the director of NASA said that the loss of, and I quote now, this valiant crew is something they will never be able to get over, the families of the astronauts, and for that matter, the nation as a whole. Mission Control lost contact with the shuttle just minutes before it was to land this morning at 9:16 Eastern Time at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. CBS News has, among other things, 2 very clear amateur photographer shots, one taken from North Texas up around Dallas, the other from the central part of the state in Waco. This is the shot from Waco that you're watching now. CBS News space consultant Bill Harwood says sources tell him that the problem, and I quote, could, very important word, a direct quote, could have been some massive structural failure in the shuttle's left wing. At the very least, we can report as a fact that in the early going, the NASA investigators are sort of concentrating, they have their focus on the left wing. Let's point out that we're in the very early stages of a long investigation, and it may in the final analysis be important or unimportant that in the early stages they're sort of concentrating on the left wing of the shuttle. There are reports that debris has been found in 5 states now, including a lot of debris in southeast Texas and the Piney Woods country in and around Nacogdoches and Corsicana. President Bush is expected to address the nation at this hour, that is sometime between 2 and 3 o'clock today, Eastern Time, possibly at 3 o'clock itself. There's no firm schedule for it, but of course CBS News will be on the air continuously, and we will bring you live coverage of the President's address to the nation when that happens. There were 7 astronauts aboard the shuttle, including 6 Americans, along with the first Israeli astronaut. Partly because of his presence, the Israeli astronaut, security surrounding this mission was tight. The Columbia had been on a 2-week science mission, which until now had been deemed a success because virtually every experiment worked. We take you now to the White House and possibly the President's address.
What?
John Roberts at the White House.
Well, Dan, we're expecting that the president will be speaking. We got the 2-minute warning about a minute and a half ago, so he should be up very soon. Of course, the president was up at Camp David when he heard the news. It was his chief of staff, Andrew Card, who telephoned him this morning to say what had happened. Sean O'Keefe, the NASA administrator, also telephoned the president. The president made the decision to come back from Camp David. He could have given the address from Camp David, Dan, but he thought more appropriate that he should come back to the White House, and the president about to speak.
My fellow Americans, this day has brought terrible news and great sadness to our country. At 9 o'clock this morning, Mission Control in Houston lost contact with our Space Shuttle Columbia. A short time later, debris was seen falling from the skies above Texas. The Columbia is lost. There are no survivors. On board was a crew of 7. Colonel Rick Husband, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Anderson, Commander Laurel Clark, Captain David Brown, Commander William McCool, Dr. Kalpana Chawla, and Ilan Ramon, a colonel in the Israeli Air Force. These men and women assumed great risk in the service to all humanity. In an age when space flight has come to seem almost routine, it is easy to overlook the dangers of travel by rocket and the difficulties of navigating the fierce outer atmosphere of the Earth. These astronauts knew the dangers, and they faced them willingly, knowing they had a high and noble purpose in life. Because of their courage and daring and idealism, we will miss them all the more. All Americans today are thinking as well of the families of these men and women who have been given this sudden shock and grief. You're not alone. Our entire nation grieves with you. And those you loved will always have the respect and gratitude of this country. The cause in which they died will continue. Mankind is led into the darkness beyond our world by the inspiration of discovery and the longing to understand. Our journey into space will go on. In the skies today, we saw destruction and tragedy. Yet farther than we can see, there's comfort and hope. In the words of the prophet Isaiah, lift your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these? He who brings out the starry hosts one by one and calls them each by name. Because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing. The same Creator who names the stars also knows the names of the 7 souls we mourn today. The crew of the Shuttle Columbia did not return safely to Earth, yet we can pray that all are safely home. May God bless the grieving families, and may God continue to bless America.
President Bush saying this is a very sad day for America, that there are no survivors, that Columbia is lost.
That's right. We have heard from the President. We have heard from NASA's Sean O'Keefe and Captain Bill Riddy, an astronaut there with the program. They say it's too early to speculate on what caused today's tragedy, but they say there is no hope for any of the astronauts.
Very quickly, the Space Shuttle was passing over North Texas this morning at about 8 o'clock, about 15 or 16 minutes before it was supposed to land at at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And suddenly, as you can see from this video, pieces started flying off of the shuttle. It went down. So far as we know, the primary fuselage portion has not yet been located. We have not been told that it has. The debris field, we understand now, spreads over 5 states, but most of it is in Texas.
In the Corsicana and Palestine areas. We want to go now to some sound previously recorded from Sean O'Keefe, the administrator there at NASA. Apparently, we don't have that ready. This, again, is a shot of the astronauts. Oh, we do have it now.
The loss of this valiant crew is something we will never be able to get over, and certainly the families of all of them, we have assured we will do everything we can possibly do to guarantee that they work their way through this horrific tragedy.
Well, it's NASA. I think one of the things that has been very consistent about all this, of course, is that friend or foe around the world now are coming in, all of the messages of condolences, and everyone recognizes the great tragedy it is and the great day of sadness for all of humankind.
That's exactly right, because these were scientists on board who were doing work not just for America, but for all of us.
Right, and a guest today.
Yes, we do. We are joined by Bruce Kalpana. He is a defense contractor. Now, you were, I imagine, inside your home in Fort Worth when you say your wife heard something.
Yes, she had gotten up and was looking out the window and saw the contrail going over. And we had forgotten that the shuttle was going to be coming over today, and then heard what now we know to be the sonic boom from the passing over of it. But there was some construction in the site very near where I live, and we've heard a lot of thumps, but this one was extra loud and kind of shook the house.
You have a background of working with the shuttle, and you know something about some things that have been determined. In fact, you had found some mistakes earlier.
Well, actually, I've not worked with the shuttle per se, but I've always been interested in it ever since its inception. And I immediately, when I heard about the disaster, started to dig on the internet to see if I could find anything related to why the mission was delayed to begin with, STS-107. And I found a particular article that may be interesting, at least in, to be brought up as far as the investigation is concerned, which talks about approximately 1/10 to and slightly larger size cracks in the fuel system of other orbiters, which are definitely newer vintage than the Columbia. The Columbia, which is the oldest.
1981.
Yes, the oldest one. And anytime there's apertures or any kind of a crack in a fuel system, that is extremely dangerous and I'm sure they had to look into it in order to find out if it was still a problem or not. If it was coming in to the atmosphere in a empty tank status and subjected in any way to as high a temperatures as we're talking about, an empty tank is much more explosive than a full tank. The fumes are what are the dangerous thing. That's when it becomes the most volatile of any type of fuel.
The CBS was reporting they're looking at structural problems in the left wing area, and I'm not quite sure of the configuration of the shuttle, whether that leads to a primary fuel source. One would think so.
I'm not sure where the fuel is stored in the shuttle, but anytime you leave any reasonable amount of the wing or the undersurface uncovered from the huge heat, it's going to break down whatever is beneath it very, very quickly. Those tiles are designed to take every bit of the heat coming in from the friction through the air.
Right, and if something were to happen in flight or anything to disrupt one of those tiles, the results could be catastrophic.
Yes, I'm sure there's redundancy in the tiles to some extent, but if you get any kind of a rippling effect of the tiles, it could present a real problem. This is all hypothesis, of course, on my part, but when I saw something that had been discovered about the fuel system and cracks in some fuel lines, or as they call it, the metal liners used to direct the flow inside the propulsion system, I had to take note of that.
We're going to move on, and we're going to bring up on the telephone now, if we can, Jason Lee, who is, I understand, a former NASA engineer and knows something about the construction of these tiles and the other elements and how dangerous they really are. Jason, what can you tell us?
Yes, sir. I can tell you, I'm looking right now at my training certificate manual, which is a NASA training manual, course number S as in Sam 203, entitled Hazardous Material Safety Training and Certification Manual. I was certified, finished first in my class. I worked in final testing on the Space Shuttle Challenger project. I was injured by the makings of something NASA calls TPS, which stands for Thermal Protection System. Now, this is the insulation that's sprayed on the external tank and also on these tiles that we see on the shuttle. Now, on the shuttle, they're, of course, baked and heated to reflect any friction upon entering the atmosphere. The problem is the inside of those tiles is comprised of TPS, which is polymeric isocyanate, the key word being cyanide. The NASA people and even President Bush has not mentioned the danger which can come from this compound becoming as light as air. If you've ever shaken your drape at your window and you've seen the dust just floating in the air, that's how light TPS is in its compound structure. Now, the hazard is, I got one piece of it, 1/10 the size of a grain of salt in my left eye, where I saw triple vision for 3 years. I saw eye specialists. I had to go through 10 to 12 eye washes a day. If one particle of this gets in people's lungs, it can develop into a form of cancer that is very deadly within a matter of years. Now, this whole area, we have to consider the winds, okay? How many of these tiles were blown completely pulverized, which is to say, how much of this polymeric isocyanate is in our upper atmosphere? This is the danger.
So you're making the assumption that some of it was pulverized and some of it is in the atmosphere?
Well, it would have to be, wouldn't it? I've seen a chunk of it. When we used to install it onto the external tank, you could just tap it with your finger and you would just see dozens of particles fly off of this, and that's from the external tank. So
Jason Lee, we appreciate your being with us, former NASA engineer, telling us about some of the dangers inherent with the shuttle and why, again, you should not be out trying to pick up these pieces.
And we also want to thank our guest on set, Bruce Kalpana, defense contractor, for being with us this afternoon. Thank you very much, Bruce.
Thank you. And, CBS 11's Sarah Dodd is in Waxahachie tonight, this afternoon, with some witness accounts and other information. Sarah?
Tracy, you're also talking a lot about these tiles, and here in Waxahachie, they have seen what they believe are 2 of those tiles, which the officials here believe fell off of the space shuttle when it exploded. There are 2 objects here that they believe are these tiles rather. They think they're about 5 miles from each other. One was found at this home just west of 35 at FM 1446. You can see this landed on the woman's roof. On the outside, it looks like a tile. Underneath, there's a substance that looks like styrofoam. There is a second object similar to this one about 5 miles away, also on the west side of 35. That's where it's found, and we're gathering video on that right now. But officials here say that they have a task force that is headed to Waxahachie. This is an FBI task force, also with members of the NASA investigation group, and they're coming out here to examine these objects and determine exactly what they are. The woman who lives in this home has been evacuated from her house. She's not allowed to go back in until the investigators come and determine exactly what this is and make sure that there are no hazardous materials or chemicals that will make her home not inhabitable. But right now they have quarantined this whole area off. You can see the yellow crime tape that's around that house. Similar situation about 5 miles away where a similar object has been found. And you can see that tile is about 6 inches by 6 inches. And the woman who lives there says this morning she woke up, she wasn't aware of anything going on. She heard a thud on her roof, and then her sister who lived down the street called her and said, have you heard about the shuttle explosion? And she said, no, but I just heard something that I think might have come from that explosion. Went outside, saw the tile, immediately called the DPS, and they have, of course, been there ever since this morning. We're still at the Waxahachie courthouse right now. The DPS officers, the sheriff's deputies, and also the county judge have set up sort of a makeshift command center here, and they're going to be having news briefings throughout their afternoon as they find out more about exactly what these things are, but they do believe they are tiles from the explosion. Reporting live in Waxahachie, Sarah Dodd, CBS 11 News.
Okay, Sarah, thank you very much. I don't know if we have that map ready or not. Chris, do we have the map of, okay, let's take a look at the map. Now, this gives you an idea. And again, if you were watching Dan Rather on CBS a little earlier, they found out that the debris field actually is spread over 5 states. But this gives you a pretty good idea of where the debris field is in Texas, principally around, we understand the bigger chunks around Lufkin, Nacogdoches, all the way over to Palestine, where they've cordoned off a number of areas there. We've had reports today from Rice and Rusk, Athens, Tyler, and so forth. So it's a rather wide area where all of this is spread out. And FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Association or agency, will take the lead in trying to assemble all of this stuff. In other words, they're going to be the lead agency that the other agencies will answer to as they go out and try to collect all these pieces of material. They'll collect that debris, and they will try the very best way that they can to reassemble this shuttle so that then they can determine exactly what happened to it.
Yeah, and Tracy, you were talking about some of this debris. We know that some of the debris is very, very tiny, as you were mentioning. Some of them that they found in the Nacogdoches area, say by the Commercial Bank of Texas, 4 feet long by 4 feet wide. They found a half-moon-shaped piece, 5 to 5.5 feet long. This is going to be a very difficult puzzle for them to repiece or to put together, and presumably will take a very long time.
We had mentioned that a lot of this stuff had been found around the Palestine area too. We'll find some means of being able to shade this in so you can begin to have some appreciation of where most of it's been found. But Ken Malloy is in the Palestine area now. Ken, what can you tell us?
Tracy, the concern out here in Anderson County is twofold. One, locating all of that fallen debris, of course, that being a big priority, but also very important, contacting people who may have actually touched that fallen debris. We've been hearing all morning and the early part of the afternoon about the hazardous chemicals that may be on those fallen pieces of debris. Along those lines, they've set up a decontamination center at the Regional Medical Center to treat people who may have come in contact with that debris. Earlier this afternoon, I spoke with Mike Pell. He is the battalion chief for the city of Palestine. Talked to the folks at NASA. What have they told you, Mike?
Yes, NASA Medical advised us that the chemicals are basically fuels and that they are very similar to gasoline contamination, whereas the person would develop a red rash, soreness, tenderness of the area, and basically we will wash them down and check them for some other contaminants and then take them into the hospital, and then they're the hospital situation.
And tell us about some of the reports you've heard of people touching this stuff.
Basically, you know, it's curiosity, and people pick them up, take them home, and then call or load them into a pickup truck or something of that nature. And it's just curiosity. And then the local volunteer departments out in the county, which have done a good job, call us and say, oh, no, now we've got some contaminated people, and they're headed this way at this time.
Have you got any reports of people heading into the hospital right now to be contaminated?
Yes, from 2 of our departments in the county, they've called and notified us that we have some people. Now, the numbers I do not know, and I won't know for quite some time.
But we do know at least 1 or 2 people have touched the debris?
Correct, yes.
And the potential danger is what?
It's minimal. Basically, they could probably decontaminate themselves, but they would be better off to come in here and let us decontaminate them and let the hospital check them.
It's serious enough, though, that NASA's concerned and they've advised you on this situation?
Yes, sir, they have. And we have been in touch with them and checked our records against what they've given us, and we're following their procedures.
Once again, that Mike Pell, the battalion chief here in Palestine, they are being very cautious about any potential hazardous material that may be on the fallen debris, and they have set up that command center and that decontamination center, and they plan on manning and staffing that 24 hours a day until this whole situation is cleared up. Live in Anderson County, Ken Malloy, CBS 11 News.
Thank you, Ken. And then very briefly, for those of you just joining us and wondering what this is all about, the Space Shuttle Columbia this morning, at about 15 minutes before it was supposed to land in Florida, cruising over Texas, just entering the atmosphere at about 200,000 feet, began to break up. The shuttle is lost, as are all 7 astronauts on board.
We're joined now by phone by Mike Peters with TxDOT. And Mike, I think you can address some of the safety issues concerning the debris that's being found across a very wide area of Texas.
The Department of Public Safety, they contacted us this morning and requested that we display a message on our electronic message boards, asking the public to report any possible debris from today's space shuttle disaster to local police or to a number provided by the DPS.
And these signs are what, throughout the state or just in a concentrated area?
Mainly our metropolitan areas. Now we have contacted 6 of our districts, including Fort Worth, Dallas, Tyler, Beaumont, Waco, and the Houston districts, and they have these messages posted on their message boards.
All right. Well, Mike Peters with TxDOT, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
You're welcome.
Cliff Caldwell, I know, had been over at TCU in Fort Worth and was talking to an analyst over there. Cliff, what do you have for us?
Actually, we were doing more than just an analyst. We were over at the TCU, the Sid Richardson building, where just inside this morning they dedicated a museum, a meteorite museum. Keynote speaker to that was a former astronaut, Harrison Schmitt. He was on Apollo 17, the backup lunar module pilot, and he also holds the distinction of being the last man to walk on the moon. It was a little bit over 20 years ago, December 11th, 1972, actually 30 years ago. Talked with him this morning about the incident that happened some 200,000 feet in the air.
There was a set procedure, basically a book on the shelf that in the event of a major accident, you pull it off and you start going through the procedures to organize it. This has been thought out in quieter times, and so it makes a lot of sense to do it that way. And initially, there will be a major effort to gather all the information possible from the telemetry, from the ground debris, the videotapes that people have taken, and things like that, to have all the information available to the team once it's organized. And then, of course, at the same time, you're trying to pull together a team of people with the appropriate expertise to be able to evaluate this kind of accident. The history of that spacecraft will be looked at all the way back to its beginning. It'll be the launch, nature of the launch, anything that may have happened during launch will be looked at. It'll be a very, very intense investigation. It will take a significant amount of time. However, NASA's in an interesting position now relative to where they were with the Challenger accident or even back in the days of the Apollo 1 accident. You really can't stand down very long. You have a space station that's operating. You have people on the space station that need support. And so I don't think that you can wait to launch the next space shuttle until you are absolutely sure what happened to Columbia.
Obviously, the collection of that data has begun already. It started about 2 hours after the accident happened. Astronaut Schmitt says the accident investigation will be very, very complex and complicated. We didn't want him to speculate, but we did say with the vast knowledge you have, having been in the program, both as an astronaut on Apollo 17, as a backup person on 15, as a ground support person on Apollo 11, and then later as an administrator, he has a vast amount of knowledge. I said, don't speculate, but tell me about the kinds of questions that you need to ask to get answers. Here's what he had to say.
I would start just by wanting to know all the information that was available about the flight, about its launch, about the recent history of the Columbia, and of course gather as much telemetry and visual information as one can about what may have actually happened. Until you have all of that data in place, it is premature to ask questions. It really is. The data itself will sort of define the kind of questions that you can ask and expect to get answers to.
Indeed. Schmitt received Navy pilot and helicopter wings before joining NASA in 1965. Again, he was the last man to walk on the moon. Having worked with NASA for almost 10 years as an administrator, he has a very good knowledge of the process, says it will be a very complicated investigation. Declined to say exactly what he thought was happening in there. As he pointed out, the Apollo capsules were a whole different animal from the space shuttle. Reporting live from TCU's campus, I'm Cliff Caldwell, CBS 11 News.
Okay, we have an Anderson County judge standing by now with Ken Malloy. Let's go back to Ken.
Tracy, one of the big tasks here this afternoon is locating all the fallen debris. Judge Kerry McKinney joins us now live. You've been dealing with the Sheriff's Department the better part of the morning and the early part of the afternoon. How's the search for the debris going, Your Honor?
Well, we've got the Sheriff's Department, Department of Public Safety, and all of our volunteer fire departments are helping try to identify where the debris is and try to take and mark it and leave it in place. And of course the main thing is to make sure that people don't come in contact with it, and if they do, they need to report. Our hospital is set up with a hazmat area behind the hospital, and I just urge anyone that did come in contact with the debris to please report to the hospital. It's important they do that.
Give us, if you could, the big picture. We've been listening to the scanner traffic. It sounds like there's debris all over Anderson County. Is it an arduous task to try to tag and locate all the debris?
Right now, one thing that's helping us quite a bit is we've got the Forest Service that's set up over at the Sheriff's Department, and we've got several officers with GPS that are going out and where the debris is located, taking GPS coordinates, and we're entering that into a computer that they have set up over there with the map of the county. and so that's helping us locate the debris.
So the global satellite positioning will help the forensic investigation after this is all done, is that right?
Yes, sir. And of course, we're still getting phone calls and people giving us locations, and it's just going to take a while to try to locate where all the debris is at. The city's been real good. They've opened up the Civic Center, and we've got officers from the police department that are helping with the sheriff's department also. Want to make sure that they're recognized for all their help too.
We've been here several hours, and we just get the impression, Your Honor, that everybody's just rolling up their sleeves and doing what they need to do.
Yes, sir. I'm real proud of our community and all the all of our volunteers and all of our agencies are working together. And I know Senator Staples, I've talked with him this morning, and he's about to go up and try to survey some of the district here, and a lot of this happened in his district. So
now, at a certain point, the debris has to be picked up. Are you folks doing that, or is that a task that will be left to NASA?
I haven't had a conversation with NASA yet, but I would assume that NASA would want to do all of that.
And at a certain point, it's going to be rather difficult to keep all those areas cordoned off, because it sounds like there are dozens and dozens of locations with fallen debris.
Yes, sir. We've got from most of it's from north central to northeast Anderson County. There's some a little bit west of that, northwest of that, and we've had about, I don't know, 60 or 70 mile area there that's where debris has been reported.
We've heard of at least 2 instances where people may have touched the debris. Have you heard of any instances where people have actually been injured by the debris, falling debris, hitting a house, a person?
We don't, to my knowledge, we don't have any reported injuries, but we do have a report or two of somebody that may have touched the debris, and we've urged them to go to the hospital. I have talked with the hospital and early this morning, right after this happened, and asked them to, be prepared for whatever we needed to do, and they have been in contact with NASA also.
And lastly, we understand you have a live press conference scheduled for 2 o'clock this afternoon?
Yes, sir. We're going to try to come over. The sheriff will be here too, and we'll give a press conference at 2 here at the Civic Center.
All right, Judge Kerry McKinney, we appreciate your time, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tracy and Karen, that seems to wrap it up for right now. The search for the fallen debris continues really along the lines of forensic investigation at this point. As you just heard the judge say, they're marking some of the fallen debris with global positioning satellite imagery so that they can recreate where the debris fell and perhaps eventually discover why the shuttle fell apart in midair. Live in Anderson County, Ken Malloy, CBS 11 News.
Yeah, they're going to be a long time trying to put all that together.
Yeah, it certainly will. And we are going to go now to Jerry Strickland. He is at the Nacogdoches Hospital. Jerry, we know that some people have been taken there because they have touched some of the debris.
That's exactly right, Karen. Some people who are taking precautionary measures at this time have come to Nacogdoches Hospital. Nobody brought here. They've come on their own. We're told 27 people have shown up to the emergency room here. They're being given some sort of... But at this point, there have been no adverse reactions to touching any of what was left behind when the space shuttle broke apart. There are debris fields all throughout this area. Just as you drive along 21 into Nacogdoches, you see several areas where constables, deputy sheriffs, people with the emergency operations have all cordoned off areas, crime scene tape surrounding certain pieces. The first piece that we saw as we headed into town was a small piece about probably 1 foot by 2 feet. That piece had small little grid patterns on it. It did look like it had burned up, and in some portions of that looked like there was some sort of styrofoam material on that as well. We've seen several pieces of debris just like that. We've also seen some pieces of metal, one behind a shut-down restaurant that was along 21, about 10 miles outside of Nacogdoches. Starting at about Jacksonville, if you've ever driven this route from Dallas all the way down to Nacogdoches, people here all along this area trying to figure out exactly what to do. Of course, emergency officials saying, don't touch it, call them first, they will take care of that. But at this point, no adverse reactions from anybody who has touched any of the debris that came off the space shuttle. But we do know 27 people have come to the hospital, not brought here by emergency personnel. They've simply walked in because there were concerns, but no adverse reactions at this point.
Okay, Jerry Strickland reporting from Nacogdoches for us. We also have on the telephone with us right now Anita Foster with the American Red Cross. Anita, I don't know what, since the counties have pressed so many of their own emergency people into service, what is it exactly that the Red Cross can do in a situation like this?
Well, one of our primary jobs at the Red Cross is to support all of these emergency workers that, as you say, have been pushed into service. they're going to be out investigating the scenes and trying to determine where debris is all over the state, and the Red Cross will be there to take care of them as well as anyone that might be affected. We got a phone call pretty early this morning from our state's Disaster Operations Center in Houston that asked all three of the chapters in North Texas to be prepared in case we had to do anything here. We do have teams of Red Cross folks here that are on their way down to Lufkin to provide some support to those emergency workers, which means that we left our area without a lot of coverage. And so the Tarrant County chapter is going to assist in an apartment fire that's going on up in the Plano area, while the Dallas Red Cross folks are preparing to move down south.
So I know you take out the canteen and so forth. Do you also take out doctors and nurses? Are you going that far with it?
Yes, the Red Cross always activates nursing anytime we have any sort of incident like this or any natural disaster or man-made disaster. And then that is both for emergency workers and also for people that have been affected. Now, this is a very unique situation, and that if people have come in contact with the debris, they're being encouraged to go directly to the hospital. For anyone else that suffers any injuries while working on the operation, the Red Cross is there to help out with that as well.
Anita, again, we thank you for your time, for sharing with us what the Red Cross will be doing. Anita Foster with the Red Cross.
And we are joined now by Betty Nguyen, who is in Arlington. We understand, Betty, are you still at the house where some debris landed? We apparently are having an audio problem with Betty, yeah. And we will try to revisit her in just a bit. Now, NASA spoke, I guess about an hour ago, saying, really calling this a tragic day for the NASA family. Yeah, it's a big organization, but they're very, very close-knit.
Well, they are. It is like family. Mm-hmm. The head of NASA spoke to reporters at Florida's Kennedy Space Center after the Columbia broke up into flames on its way to landing. All 7 astronauts, of course, killed. He says there's no indication that it was caused by anyone or anything on the ground, but of course, he doesn't know that yet. No one knows that yet. They're going to have to reassemble the craft as best they can and then go from there. But O'Keefe did say that President Bush has spoken to the crew members' families to express the deepest national regrets. The president was quite a while in coming out for his briefing to the country, which took place at about 1 o'clock this afternoon, about 30 minutes ago. But the president did, first of all, visit with the families. Now, those families, Karen, live around the Houston area, and they are going back from the Kennedy Space Center back to Houston, and the folks at NASA are going to be trying to protect them as best they can, which is all, of course, understandable.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I understand most of them were married. 5 of them had children. The husbands, wives, children were all there at the Kennedy Space Center, expecting a happy reunion with their loved ones, and that was not to be.
We were looking at that map where we were showing you exactly how the debris was coming down. That's covered, I say covered, it's hit in 5 different states that we know about. But most of it is in southeast Texas. We could see a little bit earlier in one of our maps, we were showing you the area that from, say, about Palestine, Rusk, Nacogdoches, Jacksonville, Lufkin. That's the area where most of it seems to have come down, but it stretches all the way back and off this map, clear back to the Arlington area. Mm-hmm. And that's where a piece of debris was found, and that's where our Betty Nguyen is. Let's see if we've got some audio now, Betty.
Yes, we're here in Arlington in the 2500 block of Monterey, where it appears some sort of debris may have fallen in this yard. Let's take a look at that video. You can get a better shot of it. It's basically a tennis ball size, white with purplish middle to it. Now, we're not sure exactly what this is. Some are describing it as perhaps maybe candle, perhaps maybe some waxy substance. But again, this is an active scene because it's still not known exactly what this is. And what's making it so particular is simply because we understand that a similar object was found in Rockwall with the same type of whitish outer shell and a purplish middle. Now, the owner of this house, Mr. James McAdams, joins us now. Can you tell us exactly how you discovered this in your yard and what happened?
Well, we first heard a loud something we thought hit the house this morning. We were still in bed playing with our grandchild, and something sounded like it hit the roof and sort of vibrated, and so I got up to see about my father, who's here with us, make sure he hadn't fallen, because I thought maybe he fell against the wall or something. He was okay, so I went back, played with my grandson a little bit. Then we got up and he turned on the TV, and they were beginning to show the pictures of the satellite breaking up or the shuttle breaking up. And so I came out to get my newspaper, and this was laying in the front yard, about 2 feet from my paper. So I looked at it, and I couldn't figure out what it was, so I decided we better try to call and just to get them to check it, and I called 911.
There have been a lot of warnings asking folks, please do not touch anything that may be an odd object in your yard or near your house. I suppose that you didn't do any of that, but you did alert authorities.
Right, yeah, we were already hearing on TV, if you found anything, don't touch it or stay away from it and just call, so that's what we did. We've had all the agencies. We've had the fire department, police department, DPS, and we have the FBI here now, and they're waiting for instructions of what to do next.
What have they told you about this object and what they think it might be?
He told me he didn't know what it was. He just didn't know. He wouldn't comment on that, so he did examine it, and that's what he told me.
We appreciate you talking to us. So again, this is still an active scene. The FBI is out here. The Arlington Police Department is out here. Actually, the Arlington Fire Department was out here a little bit earlier today. Could not determine exactly what it is, so the federal authorities have been called in. This is still an active scene. We'll stay here throughout the day and tell you what we know when we do find out something. Back to you in the studio.
Okay, thank you very much, Betty. We were talking a little bit earlier today, and several times as a matter of fact, with our Mike Berger. For those of you who may not know it, Mike, while a meteorologist, has spent a good deal of his career also working in news, and he's covered a number of these launches and was, for a long while, a Florida resident, is very familiar with the things that are taking place with NASA then and today. And I wanted to talk to you, Mike, if I can, first of all, about this report of the cracks that we were talking about earlier. Take us back and tell us why that's an important thing to at least consider.
Well, excuse me, it needs to be considered. The interesting thing, when the initial cracks were discovered, NASA went back to all of the orbiters and they checked all of those fuel lines, and they did find some cracks. So that's why the whole thing, the whole program was delayed for about 4 months while they went back and repaired them. Will we find out if that's the cause of this crash? Hard to say. But it just goes back to what the director of flight said at NASA when he said, we don't take any of these flights lightly. Every time a shuttle is set to go, believe me, they go over these things with a fine-tooth comb, and especially after the Challenger. And we go back to the Challenger so many times because the Challenger really set the stage and the pattern for what was to come in all of the shuttle launches after that time back in 1986. Because NASA didn't want any mistakes. They didn't want this to happen anymore because it's such a vital part of the government and very, very vital programs, including putting up the space station, that they just go over this so carefully that it's a rare, rare thing when they would even consider. I can't even imagine a point where they would say, well, that's okay, we'll let it go. They just don't work that way anymore.
Mr. O'Keefe with NASA, of course, had said that this, and he said this flatly, I don't know, he might have to eat some words a little bit later on as the investigation continues, but that it wasn't the fault of anyone on the ground or any of the crews. And Mike, that's a pretty far-reaching statement, if it seems to me.
Well, it really is, and that's really hard to say at this point. There's going to be a lot of finger-pointing. There's going to be a lot of blame, if you will, assessed throughout this whole thing. Somebody's going to say, well, it's their fault, it's his fault, her fault, whatever the case is. The bottom line is they have to find out exactly what happened. And if we'll go back to Apollo 13, Tracy, interestingly enough, that whole problem was caused, many of you saw the movie, by a little mistake that had been made 2 years prior to the launch of that mission. So this could have been something that was sitting there that everybody looked at, but they never saw. It's just hard to say.
Well, the other similarity, of course, with what happened here and what happened with Apollo 13, Mike, is that the media just sort of lost interest in Apollo 13, and we had also lost interest in this. I mean, these shuttle flights have become so routine.
Right. They really have, and it's sad in a sense, but I guess in another sense, that's the way the news business is. Unless it's dramatic, you know, you kind of take it for granted. We've had 88 flights since Challenger exploded. Columbia is the oldest shuttle, by the way. It's also the heaviest.
Yeah.
Even though it's been refitted, it is still the heaviest shuttle, and that's one reason they don't send it to the space station, because they can't carry enough payload with it.
There you go. Good point. Thank you, Mike Berger.
And we want to point out that our reporter Jay Gormley is in the area around Palestine, and he says that he's just seen fighter jets flying overhead, apparently looking for some of this debris. Now, I was just reading on the wires that this just crossed. The government has appointed an independent board to investigate the disaster. Experts from the Air Force and the Navy, which had 5 of the 7 crew members, will join officials from the from the Transportation Department and other federal agencies on the review panel. The Space Agency is also going to conduct its own investigation, of course, into the disaster. And as you and Mike were talking about, Tracy, and something that we have heard, this is something that could have happened years ago, years before this shuttle ever took off. But again, it is possible that something may have happened during liftoff that damaged the shuttle. There was that. The engineers were looking at that. They had said that, no, we don't believe this was anything. They told reporters Friday, this is yesterday, this isn't anything that would have damaged the craft. But, and Mike, you touched on this a few moments ago about that wing, that left wing.
That's true, and the interesting part of this, and all of us are tending to do this, or tend to do this, because we want to tell the story, we want to be as accurate. But right now, we're getting into the world of speculation, and quite honestly, there's no way to know at this time.
No, I mean, that is true, and there will be a lot of speculation. However, there also are sometimes some clues that comes out of that will come out of these things, too, Mike. And we do know that the left wing is sort of a focus of the investigation as it stands right now.
And not only that, but NASA is asking, by the way, all people who took these videos, and there are obviously many of them across north central Texas, to please contact NASA. You can probably contact them on the web, or you can call them in Houston and tell them that you have this video, because the experts can take a look at this and they can say, that could have happened right there.
Right, depending on your location.
Exactly. It takes the data they have in Houston as well as at Kennedy Space Center, and then they see this and they start to put the puzzle together.
Of course, a lot of witnesses, as Mike is pointing out, and Michael Hill has more on that part of our story from our newsroom. Mike?
Tracy, the pictures we were just looking at and Mike Berger was describing, those are the pictures from Raymond Cervantes. He's a production director for a Hispanic Broadcasting Corporation here in Dallas-Fort Worth. He was outside his house this morning, one of the many of North Texans who witnessed this. He had his Canon digital camera with him, and here's what he told us just a short while ago. Take us back to the moment you were looking through the viewfinder of your camera and describe what you were seeing and what you were feeling and what you were thinking.
Well, I stepped outside, and the express intent to videotape the shuttle as it comes over, as usually does. Usually looking to the west and notice the shuttle as it comes in. It starts as a bright star, and then it flares up, and then you'll notice the plasma trail, the distinct plasma trail that lasts for a couple of minutes in the atmosphere as it's coming in. It's doing about 17,000 miles an hour at 200,000 feet. So it is going pretty quickly. It will transverse from the west to the east within about 20 seconds. And once it leaves our area, our viewing area, in about 7 minutes later, it's landed in Florida. So it's quite a quick ride.
And describe what you saw this morning. The moment you noticed something was unusual.
I noticed something unusual. My wife told me that looks like there was something flying next to the shuttle. And then I expressed to her that it might just be a tile or a piece of ice that might just come off of the shuttle. And then I did notice that there was a couple other pieces coming off. And on the video, you can see where it looks like there's 4 or 5, and then all of a sudden a plume, just like maybe a big puff, and then more pieces are starting to come off. So that could be the point where the actual explosion took place over North Texas.
At what point did you realize that there was something very unusual, that there was something wrong?
I did notice something unusual than any other reentry. Usually about 7 to 8 minutes later, you can hear a double sonic boom way off in the distance. But this one happened too quickly. It happened about 5 minutes after the shuttle passed over, and it shook the house. It rattled the glass. It sounded like a big explosion. I live next to Bell Helicopter in Hurst, and you usually get helicopters and trucks that go by that are pretty loud, and they rattle the house a little bit. But this was a distinct boom. It did rattle the house, and I just wondered what it was. I turned the TV on, and I did notice that something had tragically happened to the shuttle.
And at what point, what did you say to yourself as you're watching this? What were you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking maybe that is something like a tile or some pieces of debris that might have come off, but this is routine. You know, the shuttle comes in, it's protected by its heat tiles, it's been tested, but this is the oldest shuttle in the fleet. It is 16 years old. It's had maybe 32 flights on her. And it has been retrofitted about 2 years ago with a glass cockpit. It's up to standards now in today's technology. But what we saw today is very tragic.
Raymond Cervantes, words and pictures from him as he took his Canon digital camera and captured the flight Space Shuttle Columbia this morning. He said he's videotaped the other space shuttles coming in, Discovery, for instance, and the Mir, the Russian spacecraft, but he says he's never seen anything like this. Tracy and Karen, back to you.
None of us have.
Yeah, that's right. The closest thing, of course, would be what happened to Challenger, right. But that was in 1986 and entirely different kind of thing. That was on takeoff.
Almost 17 years to the day, just on the 28th of 86.
Time indeed does fly. Now, there will be a congressional investigation. Kay Bailey Hutchison will be one of the people involved. And in our Dallas newsroom now, we have Jim Walker standing by with that part of our story. Jim?
Tracy, we just spoke with her just a few minutes ago at her home in northwest Dallas. She was out actually walking a dog with a friend when this happened this morning. We asked her about what she heard, what she saw, and her reaction to the explosion this morning.
I was out walking this morning in my neighborhood with a neighbor, and I heard what I thought was a sonic boom. And we remarked on it while we were walking, but I just thought it was an F-16 from the Fort Worth Naval Air Station. So I came home, and about 15 minutes later, Ray said, "Turn on the television. You're not going to believe it." And so I turned it on and then realized that that's what we had heard. Well, all of us are in shock. The loss of these wonderful astronauts, of course, is the personal side. But then you also realize that we are in the forefront of technology as a country, and our absolute commitment to the mission of NASA is there. And as a member of the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, we will be having hearings. We will try to determine what we need to do to make this the very safest, but also the most far-reaching mission that NASA can possibly have.
The senator right there mentioned the hearings that Tracy mentioned a second ago they will be having as far as the investigation into this. Also, we talked a little bit about Lockheed Martin and the impact that Lockheed Martin has to do with the building of the space shuttle and what impact that might have on our economy. The senator says she doesn't expect any impact because she says the space program, despite this problem, despite Challenger, will go on, and Lockheed Martin will certainly be a part of that in the years to come. Tracy?
Jim, before we let you go,
sure.
Actually that's an excellent point, because I think that we were talking a little earlier about how we tend to back away from such projects as we do this sort of analysis of what happened. She doesn't think that that will happen, that we'll continue the program as is.
Well, she speculated there could be a little bit of a lag before things get going again, as there always is with a tragedy of this sort, but she said it will go on, and Lockheed Martin will certainly be a part of that in the year ahead. She also mentioned, we talked a little bit about the impact of this kind of taking the war on terrorism off the front page. She said that she is confident the president will maintain his course in pursuing the war on terrorism, and she doesn't expect this to be a diversion from that.
Jim Walker, our aviation reporter, too, we might point out. Jim, thank you very much. We appreciate that.
About an hour and a half ago, we heard from NASA. They held a news conference. NASA Administrator Sean O'Keefe had this to say.
The loss of this valiant crew is something we will never be able to get over, and certainly the families of all of them, we have assured we will do everything we can possibly do to guarantee that they work their way through this horrific tragedy.
And again, that's Sean O'Keefe with NASA. For those of you, and I know that this is happening, here it is a Saturday and people are tuning in to see a basketball game or whatever, and you're seeing these things perhaps for the first time. The Space Shuttle Columbia apparently broke apart in flames as it was about 15 minutes from landing. It was streaking over Texas toward its landing strip today, and all 7 astronauts, 6 Americans and an Israeli colonel, were all killed. NASA did not immediately declare the crew dead. It actually took them a little while. Later, however, after noontime, they finally did say that they realized that not only was the shuttle gone, but so were all of the astronauts. And the flag next to NASA's countdown clock was then lowered also to half-staff. And officials at the Kennedy Space Center said that President Bush was visiting first, and he did visit first with the families before then stepping out and making a statement.
This day has brought terrible news and great sadness to our country. At 9 o'clock this morning, Mission Control in Houston lost contact with our Space Shuttle Columbia. A short time later, debris was seen falling from the skies above Texas. The Columbia is lost. There are no survivors. On board was a crew of 7. Colonel Rick Husband, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Anderson, Commander Laurel Clark, Captain David Brown, Commander William McCool, Dr. Kalpana Chawla, and Ilan Ramon, a colonel in the Israeli Air Force. These men and women assumed great risk in the service to all humanity. In an age when space flight has come to seem almost routine, it is easy to overlook the dangers of travel by rocket and the difficulties of navigating the fierce outer atmosphere of the Earth. These astronauts knew the dangers, and they faced them willingly, knowing they had a high and noble purpose in life. Because of their courage and daring and idealism, we will miss them all the more. All Americans today are thinking as well of the families of these men and women who have been given this sudden shock and grief. You're not alone. Our entire nation grieves with you. And those you loved will always have the respect and gratitude of this country. The cause in which they died will continue. Mankind is led into the darkness beyond our world by the inspiration of discovery and the longing to understand. Our journey into space will go on. In the skies today, we saw destruction and tragedy. Yet farther than we can see, there is comfort and hope. In the words of the prophet Isaiah, lift your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these? He who brings out the starry hosts one by one and calls them each by name. Because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing. The same Creator who names the stars also knows the names of the 7 souls we mourn today. The crew of the Shuttle Columbia did not return safely to Earth, yet we can pray that all are safely home. May God bless the grieving families, and may God continue to bless America.
If you look right in the very middle of that picture, you'll see Dr. Chawla, and perhaps you don't know that Kalpana Chawla was a graduate of UTA. Dr. Chawla actually attended UTA at the same time that Karen Borda was there.
That's right. She was earning her master's, completing her master's probably as I was earning my bachelor's degree. She is the 2nd UTA graduate to travel into space. She has been an astronaut since 1994. This was her 2nd space flight, and her first one was back in 1996. Now, from what I understand, her responsibilities were to, at least on her earlier space flight, was to and she was in charge of the robotic arm. And we do have some video, I believe, a prayer vigil for this astronaut. This is from India, her native country. And Tracy, you remarked earlier that the newspapers in India today, the headlines were just so excited about this woman. And
yeah, I mean, you know, we talk so much about Israel and what the astronaut on board, the Israeli astronaut on board, meant to Israel, which of course was very important. But Dr. Chawla was the first Indian to go into space, and she was native born. And all over India today, and virtually every city in India today, were these wonderful tributes to her that had been, of course, all printed up and published before this tragedy. And then, of course, it was just a terrible hush that fell across all of India as the word spread that she had been killed.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, Tracy, Israel as well. Israel had its first astronaut on board this flight, Ilan Ramon, a 48-year-old colonel in Israel's Air Force. And you just returned from Israel about a week ago.
Yeah, I was over there when the shuttle went up, as a matter of fact, and it was, again, the same kind of exuberance. They were so pleased to have something positive to report for a change after 28 months of violence occurring all through Israel and the occupied territories, and all of the people who have died in both sides of that terrible conflict over there. They actually had the information of Colonel Ramon on the front page of all of the papers, sort of displacing all of the bad news on that particular day, and they were so very, very proud on television and on radio, all of these interviews with him, interviews with his family, and conversations about what this really meant in terms of bringing Israel along and making it a part of the world community.
And as we know, about 6 hours ago, the Space Shuttle disintegrated upon re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. Robert Riggs joins us now near Nacogdoches, where they have been finding a lot of debris. Robert?
Karen, we're on Highway 21, about 15 miles west of Nacogdoches, and this is where some of the heavy debris trail starts in this area. We've interviewed ranchers that were out doing their morning chores that described hearing the roar of what they thought was a jet overhead, looking up, and what's described to us is that they suddenly saw the contrail look like it started fishtailing, and then there was an explosion, and this debris starts raining down. As we've driven down this road, we've seen, the largest piece we've seen is about 1 by 3 feet, and it's a section off of the fuselage of the top where the protective tile was, and there's charred remains of the tile left on there. We've seen other smaller pieces, tiny rivets that look like they've come out of. As a matter of fact, right now we're driving up on another scene where there's another piece. This is, of course, attracting a lot of interest from the various farmers around this area that are seeing these things out. Everybody's talking about what they heard. The police are apparently being real strained because they're trying to get out to these various areas and seal them off. And we went by a chicken ranch and we could not get in, but a piece had hit the roof of a chicken house while the farmer was in there working this morning. Karen?
Well, Robert, your signal, you're starting to break up just a little bit. You mentioned, though, that some of the people had seen sort of a fishtailing effect on this contrail.
Well, yeah, what they report hearing is they heard a roar, and as they looked up, as they described it, was like a rumble of thunder going across the sky. They looked up, following it, then it appeared to start fishtailing and then explode, and then there's this debris raining down. We talked to a volunteer firefighter who came driving through this area about 10 minutes later where some of this debris hit, and he said it was a white haze across the road. And he described the smell as, from his firefighting experience, like the smell of electrical equipment burning. And you can still just slightly smell that here now.
You know, Robert, the interesting thing is that the final radio transmission between Mission Control and the shuttle gave no indication of any trouble, and they were tracking this thing at about 8 o'clock when Mission Control abruptly lost all the data and the voice contact with the shuttle and the crew. And then residents from Texas and Arkansas and Louisiana, altogether 5 states, received debris, and several states saw this thing happen, which gives you an indication of how high up 200,000 feet really is.
Yeah, you know, all the people we've talked to, they had no idea this was the space shuttle or what was happening. Just the piece really shot here.
Okay, right. I'll have to interrupt here, Robert. I'm sorry. We know that you're driving, but we've lost your signal. You're just kind of trailing off. We'll wait until you get to another one of those relay points and you can talk to us again. But I think we were all stunned. And the other thing that we've been talking about today is the fact that we'd sort of become so blasé about the shuttle flights. They'd been so routine. And if there was any problem, then the thing would put down at Edwards Air Force Base. I mean, it had become so incredibly routine.
You were talking about the wide area, Tracy. This video was taken from Waco. Most of the video we've seen has been taken from this area, North Texas, Northeast Texas. This was taken from Waco this morning, and you can see very clearly the different bits of light coming off the space shuttle as it is apparently breaking up.
Well, Mike Berger raised a very important and interesting point a while ago, and I know that he's watched this. These things have taken place before where they take all of this video, and they will be able to track this thing as it was going west to east, and they'll be able to piecemeal this stuff in, much as you would if you were doing a panoramic scene, trying to keep your camera stationary so you'd shoot to the left, middle, and then to the right, and then put them all together. Mike?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Tracy. They'll take all the data that they've collected from their computers. That was all locked down in Houston. And the experts will go back. They'll go over this whole thing from the first time that those rocket engines lit up in Florida at Cape Canaveral, Cape Kennedy, if you will, and then right up to the very end in the last transmission. They'll take all the video together. By that time, they'll have many of these pieces mapped out on a GPS, and they'll track it out, and they'll try and determine just exactly what happened. Thought it was kind of interesting also, Tracy, that we talk about NASA as running the shuttle program. That's not entirely true. It's actually run by a company called United Space Alliance, which is an alliance between Lockheed Martin and the Boeing company. It started out as Rockwell, and then Boeing took that over. And so those two companies have put their heads and collective bankrolls together, and they actually run the day-to-day operations and what I want to say, the overseeing, basically, of all the shuttles.
Yeah, you know, we had hoped that at once upon a time that this would become something of an international program, right. And the Russians had fallen so far behind. And when Russia imploded, and or I should say the Soviet Union right. did, and then Russia just wasn't up to snuff, and we used their old space station for as long as we possibly could, and beyond the point where it was safe. So they just sort of dropped off, and this thing has been one superpower, the United States, with other folks jumping on board as they can.
Yeah, and it's like so many other things. The United States is going to be the big bankroll in this whole thing because Russia's had so many financial problems that they literally can't afford to do it. And there's the rockets they've been sending up to resupply the people in the space station are just old models. So when it comes time to take important pieces of equipment up, the space shuttle has indeed been the workhorse. And as we said earlier, Tracy, and as you and I were talking, there are people up on the space station now. They can't be left there indefinitely. So probably the shuttle is going to have to fly before the investigation's over with.
Let's go off now to Palestine. There's a news conference. We understand they're going to talk about the track of the debris. Let's listen to that.
Say that our sympathies go out to the astronauts on the space shuttle and their families, and our prayers are with them. Today I have with me our Senator Todd Staples and Sheriff John Hobson and Trooper Charlie Morgan with the Department of Public Safety, the Public Information Officer. And just to try to give you an update of what's happened in Anderson County today, and that will probably stick mostly to what is happening in our county. The Sheriff's Department, our Police Department, our volunteer fire departments, Department of Public Safety, Emergency Management Coordinator, and just a lot of volunteers are working together right now and have been all morning to try to identify all of the sites where debris has landed in Anderson County from the space shuttle. And I'd just like to commend the efforts of all those individuals and the work that they've done this morning. I have been in touch with our U.S. Senator John Cornyn's office. He's contacted me and offered resources if we need certain resources. We do have Johnson Space Center information in case we need to coordinate things with them. Our local hospital here has set up a hazmat area behind the hospital and with the fire department and the EMS. And if anyone has come in contact with any of the debris, I would urge them to go to the hospital. I talked with Dan Gideon with the hospital, our director here, and they're just, as a precaution, they're taking and they'll go through the hazmat area, and then the hospital will treat them and keep them for observation. But that's just a precaution. And I think what I'll do is let, one of the things I did want to mention is our Texas Forest Service has come in, working with the Sheriff's Department and other agencies, and has set up a computer system, and the Sheriff's deputies are out taking GPS coordinates and plotting those on a map for us. And so I think I have handed out a map of just to give you an example of what they're doing for us. This time I'll turn it over to Sheriff Hobson and let him make comments.
Thank you, Judge. I'll make mine brief and then turn it over to Senator Staples. At approximately 8 a.m. this morning Central Standard Time, I, along with others in this county, heard the rumbling overhead and saw the contrail. And then very, very shortly thereafter, folks, our phones started ringing off the wall, and we started our emergency response. Right now, what we're trying to do, as the judge said, is to coordinate where this debris is falling across the county. You're talking about a county that's about 1,200 square miles, and we're probably 70 miles across, and it looks like the trajectory took a northwest to southeast trajectory across the county, and there's debris scattered much in a straight line in that trajectory across the county. Our deputies right now and folks from the fire departments and volunteers are out there trying to find the debris. We're using the GPS systems to document it. We're photographing it the best we can and trying to secure it. As you can imagine, manpower is strapped. For us here locally, I can just, I don't want to think about what's happening in the counties east of here. But we've had great support from the state and from the governor's office and from the federal government. We've had good support from NASA, a quick response and telling us exactly what some of the things that we need to do and to look for. And we do appreciate that very much. We have no injuries from any debris falling. We have had a few small fires. Those were taken care of quite quickly. And we're trying to tell the folks not to touch the debris. If they do, please go to the emergency room to be decontaminated. I just left my office, and I was told that we have had 4 people show up at our local emergency room that had touched the debris, and they are working with them right now. Nothing life-threatening that I know of, but we are working very diligently to try to document the debris and wait for NASA and the folks from that are going to do the investigation on this to come in and take care of what we found. We appreciate everyone's help, and again, please, if you find any of this debris, and you may find it anywhere at any time now across the counties, but if you do find it, please notify the local law enforcement authorities and don't touch it, stay away from it. Just let us know where it is. I appreciate everything Senator Staples has done and all the other volunteers in the county. County Judge, appreciate everything that everyone's done to help us with this, and it's just going to take some time. Senator Staples.
Thank you, Sheriff. The circumstances that we gather here today for are truly tragic. It is unimaginable what has occurred to our nation and in our state. Our hearts go out to the astronauts, their families, and to the entire NASA family. The resources of the state of Texas have been fully engaged at all levels. The federal government, from the U.S. Marshal's Office, the military, the FBI, ATF, just every facet of law enforcement and emergency personnel is fully engaged at this time responding to the crisis. The length of the area over which the debris has been scattered appears to run from a line in the Navarro, Corsicana area, possibly down into Leon County and Jewett, all the way to the Louisiana border. Significant debris has been discovered here in Anderson County alone, with 30-plus sites that have been identified.
And identifying more.
And identifying more. Cherokee County has multiple sites with debris on specifically on a rooftop of a residence and on city streets. Nacogdoches County, Angelina County, the northern portion, and Sabine and San Augustine, two rural counties close to the Louisiana border, has a significant amount of debris that has been discovered. Sheriff Maddox of Sabine County and I got off the phone momentarily ago. There's about a 4-foot tank, is the way he described it, with yellow vapor emanating from that tank. They have quarantined that site from about 150 miles away. Volunteer personnel, volunteer firefighters, emergency response teams are all over searching for sites, trying to quarantine those sites. We know that F-16s have flown the path of Columbia. They're photographing that path, looking for potential debris sites. We know that it is a very rural, rugged terrain in many circumstances, possibly falling into a national forest. The military has been activated and out of Bryan and Barksdale, and ground crews are being sent to confiscate this material. It could go on for days with the amount of material that is on the ground. And it is my understanding another press conference for an update from Sheriff Hobson and Judge McKinney will be held at 6 p.m.
Yes,
at the right here at the Civic Center today. And we have Corporal Morgan with the Texas DPS that if you have any questions, I know that any of these gentlemen would be happy to answer them.
Can one of you explain the process of how this happens and who is involved from the time you find a piece of debris to the time that whoever it is that gets here to take it away, whenever that might be?
Sure, you want me to do it? Well, we rely on, of course, local phone calls first to initiate the process. It comes into our dispatch center with the sheriff's office. We dispatch a deputy or someone from law enforcement to the scene. They document it, they photograph it, they secure it, they quarantine it. We're then followed up with other folks with our GPS system who come behind them and GPS it, so we'll have good coordinates. We then will notify NASA or the folks that do the follow-up investigation or that's going to do the investigation, give them the coordinates of that, and they're the ones that will take charge of that debris and take charge of that investigation. Does that help you?
Yes, sir. When do you expect that someone from NASA or someone that they send might arrive to start looking at some of this?
Right now, I can't tell you. I'm sure that some of the counties east of here, where there is a lot larger debris, NASA is probably already on the scene there. I talked to NASA earlier this morning, and I know that they were at approximately 9 o'clock our time. They were dispatching a helicopter to Nacogdoches and told me that they would try to get one here a little bit later on. But that was early today. We've had a good response, and it's been a good response with the folks from NASA trying to give us help. Yes, sir?
Could you describe the debris that you've seen?
The debris ranges anywhere from a few square inches up to 3 and 4 feet metallic in size and 6 feet in size metallic. It can be described as anything from the tile from the spacecraft to anything or objects metallic from the shuttle. Excuse me.
Nothing is clearly identifiable?
I can't address that. Maybe Senator Staples can.
I visited one site in Anderson County on State Highway 155 about 6 miles north of the city of Palestine. There's a piece of debris that landed in the median on a divided 4-lane highway. It's about a 6x4 metal curved piece of material. It appeared that the material had tremendous heat stress. It had been ripped in irregular patterns. There was a significant hole in the middle of that piece of metal. It was not smoking at that time, and no vapor was emanating from the material.
What time was that again?
That was first reported in Anderson County shortly after the explosion and I observed it about 10 a.m. this morning.
And how many locations of debris have you narrowed down to, say, 30?
30 plus, and reports are still coming in Anderson County alone.
Is that all of the debris?